Welcome, everyone, to another Choosing Vibrancy expert interview. And I'm privileged today, and I think you're going to feel the same way, to hear from Suzanne Jabour from Vancouver, Canada, who is a grief educator. So I know this topic is a little dicey, could be for some of us. Grief is a hard thing to talk about. And if you want to go back and to my playlist and listen to the unstoppable story that Suzanne shared, she shares that she lost a son. And I mean, I'm a mom of three girls. That's like my worst nightmare. So that's a lot. That was quite the unstoppable story to hear. So, but this has inspired Suzanne in doing the work that she does. And so I'm delighted for you to share your expertise, because everything you're talking about in terms of how you deal with grief is self-care. And honestly, I think for people to understand how to help others that they're
Mhm.
close to have lost someone, that's self-care for them, for themselves, of how knowing how to deal with it, as well as certainly very supportive for the person that they are wanting to support. So
Yeah.
this is a tough but perfect topic. So please share with us,
Share
tell a
with
little
us.
bit, not the whole story, but a little bit about how you were inspired to get into this work.
Yeah. And as you were saying, you can hear the longer version on the other playlist. But just to give a bit of context, like most grief experts, educators, coaches, researchers, most of us come to the field through our own experience because we have a big loss in our life that we don't know how to navigate. So we have to learn how for ourselves. That's what happened to me. I didn't know enough about grief to mourn a child. Even though I had lost both of my parents before Ben died. So I'd had close losses, but nothing like that out of order loss of a child. It's just next level. And I didn't know enough. So I knew for me, I'm a really great student, and I knew that the education piece
Mhm.
was where the power was, right? Knowledge is power. And if we can understand something, then it's also less scary. So I love how you're sort of setting up for us that, yeah, this can be an awkward conversation. Talking about grief can feel really difficult. And
Mhm.
I believe that's because we don't know enough.
Yeah.
And when we don't know enough, then we haven't built skills. We aren't having conversations. We aren't learning from each other.
Mhm.
And we feel really frozen in fear, right? If you think
Right.
about, I liken it to when you got your driver's license. Like if you think about that first day, I don't know, my mom might have been the only one, but I literally got my learner's license, which here at that time back in the olden days was a written exam.
Mhm.
You get your learner's license. She made me drive home from there.
Wow.
I was terrible. I didn't know enough. I had no experience. I couldn't do it. It was a mess. I only drove home. I didn't try and drive across the country, right? But when you practice, we get more confidence. Now I drive without even thinking really about it. It's a very fairly unconscious thing for the most part.
Sure.
And my mission is to have these conversations about grief in a way that it doesn't make you want to run scared for another room, but it feels like something you could lean into. And that's why I focus on that education piece. Because if we understand grief
Mhm.
a little bit better, and then we can talk openly about the best practices for how to support each other, then we could shift the whole thing and we could disrupt this place of fear and isolation and turn it into a place of connection and love.
Yeah. And again, I think it's that on both sides. It's the person who's
Yes.
experiencing the grief, and
Yep.
it's necessary for the people that are supporting someone that they love that's going through it. Because I
Yep.
can't tell you how many times I've heard from people that have lost someone, and it often is not, it's not usually when it's if it's a 90 or 100-year-old parent or somebody, it's not quite the same as somebody that
Yep.
is unexpected, right? And I've heard people's response being that, they kind of lost their friends, that people just stayed away from them.
Yep.
They may have shown up for the initial funeral and all of that,
Mhm.
but then they couldn't come back to them. They didn't know how to act. They didn't know what to say. They didn't know how
Yep.
to be. So,
Yeah. And it's a big problem. I mean, let's just name it. It's a problem.
mhm,
It's creating a lot of tension in relationships. And there is this kind of known among grievers that grief changes your address book. And that's where my curiosity really started. Like, why was that the case? When I know people that I was really close with wanted to show up for me, I know they did, but
yeah,
they didn't. So, what was that about? And really, it is about not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do. We kind of instinctively understand that the things we've heard in the past don't serve anymore. We kind of get that.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do any harm. So, what I'd love for people to leave with is some really tangible things
Right.
that you can implement immediately. So, we're going to dive right into it.
Perfect.
And I just want to start by acknowledging that it's going to be messy.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to stay out of feeling shame. Because if we're feeling ashamed about something, we can't grow. You can't learn when you feel shame. The two don't go together.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need to do is learn and grow. So we're going to release the shame. We are awkward and ill equipped to handle grief because our society is awkward and ill equipped to handle grief. So
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. We all got here together. We're going to start to shift that. What I like to do to help people understand is break it into two different things because the suggestion is actually completely different. When
Okay.
we're talking about what to say, which is where you need to start, it's the most open ended, heartfelt, loving, truthful thing. So, anything you've heard, all those cliches and platitudes, if you think about them, they don't sound heart centered. They don't sound loving. They
Mm-hmm.
sound a little bit dismissive sometimes. They sound a little bit superior. We don't want to say any of those. They're all bad. What you want to say is something that's true for you that comes from the heart. It's going to be different every time because the
Mm-hmm.
person you're speaking to is different and their loss is different. I think we need to compress and break down that hierarchy of, this loss is more worthy of grief than any other. It doesn't serve anybody. And what you say to a family member, your best friend, is going to be different than what you say to a colleague, regardless of the loss. It all
Sure.
needs to come from the heart and be honest. If
Okay.
you don't really know what to say, own that. The best things that people said to me were things like, I have no idea what to say.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine what you're going through, or I can, whichever one is true. It's awful. And I care about you deeply, and I'm here to help figure it out.
Yeah. I feel those words.
Right?
I feel the truth, like hearing that that's being honest and being there, wanting to be there, not knowing how, and willing. What I hear also is a willingness to struggle through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because as
I
you
feel
said so brilliantly, this is impacting both people, right? As a griever, I was scared and confused and I didn't know what was happening. And the people who wanted to support me felt the same way. So
exactly.
when we could both start there, because I could say back to something like that, yeah, I don't know what to do either. I can't even imagine how I'm going to get through today.
Yeah.
And I know I need to figure it out. So welcome. Like, welcome to
Right.
this messy, awful journey that none of us want to be on. But here we are, and we'll figure it out. Right. And we did. I have four stalwart companions, I call them, on this journey who just showed up in a variety of different ways. And almost every one of them started with something like that. They just owned that they didn't know, but they wanted to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
And that opens connection, right? We
Mhm.
feel that. We can feel how that's expansive and not contracting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When it comes to the what to do, it's the exact opposite. We say things like, anything you need, I'm here for you. Wonderful. I got to the place where I just had to feel the energetic of what people said because the words were not helpful.
Uh-huh.
The energetic of that is great. Anything you need, like I genuinely want to help. The
Right.
problem is one of the symptoms your griever has is grief fog, trauma brain, whatever you want to call it. There's a bunch of
Sure.
different names,
Sure.
but your brain really doesn't operate very well for quite some time, much longer than you believe. And what that means is when someone gives you an open ended offer like that, you can't use it
Mm-hmm.
because your brain can't conceptualize a
Mm-hmm.
future need, a big need. It just can't do it. So
Right.
when it comes to what to do, we want to offer really specific things that are simple. So something like, and it's even better if you're already doing it and they're just piggybacking on, because then that unpacks all that worry that you're inconveniencing anybody.
Okay.
So something like, I'm going to the grocery store. Go open your fridge and tell me what's missing, and I'll bring it
Okay.
to you this afternoon.
Ah, I love that. What do you need? What do you want?
Yeah, go open your pantry. What are you
Mhm.
missing that you need? I'll go get it for you.
Okay.
I'll bring it this afternoon. Grief groceries is a thing. I struggled with grocery shopping for about a year and a half. Thankfully, I had an angel who did it for me. But it was the grocery store is full of activators and really hard. Every time I see an abandoned cart, I think, oops, someone's having a griefy moment, and you just have to leave and leave your stuff behind.
Yeah.
Really practical. If you're already doing it, we're having snowmageddon here today. If it's snowy where you are and it's your neighbor who's lost somebody, what if you said, hey, I know shoveling is probably not going to work out for you. What if every time I'm shoveling my walk, I shovel yours too? Would that be helpful?
Uh-huh.
And then they get to decide yes or no. When I'm taking out my garbage cans, could I take yours too? Because I'm going to promise you they probably don't know what day it is. Never
Right.
mind what time the garbage is supposed to be out or not out and all the stuff
Right.
that happens with garbage.
Right.
Really practical, tangible things.
Okay.
I love to cook. Send me 3 of your favorite recipes and I'll bring them to you tomorrow.
Wow. I love that.
Tangible.
Like you're saying, very tangible. They make sense.
Yeah. Everything
It's
that you need, the griever needs too.
right. And it's not making it so big that the
No.
person that it can be like, oh, that's too much. Like let me come
Yeah.
over and take, do all your laundry or something. I don't know. But I can see where it would be like, oh, I don't want to bother you. And women tend to do that anyhow. They don't want to be a bother.
Absolutely.
They're concerned. So
Yep.
the fact that you're saying I'm going anyhow, that
Yeah.
kind of levels it out. That kind of normalizes it. That kind of is like, oh, okay, well then it wouldn't be such a big deal for me to ask you.
Yeah.
I love that a
Exactly.
lot.
Exactly. And something that your person needs. Some people need childcare help. Some people need elder care help. You know your person that you're supporting.
Right.
What do they need?
Right.
I had someone in my workshop who loved to paint walls, like paint rooms. And
Uh-huh.
the person she was supporting hated the color of their bedroom. And I said to her, like, if this is someone you would be comfortable doing this with, not having a peaceful, calm place to go try and sleep is
Yeah.
unfathomable to me. This was another person who'd lost a son.
Uh-huh.
I said, what if you offered that you would come and paint the room for them? Because she loved it. She loved doing that. So she did. One
Uh-huh.
weekend, she messaged and phoned up her person and said, hey, do you have a color in mind? Send me the swatch. I'm going to go buy the paint your room, and it'll be done by this weekend.
Mm.
And that's what she did. Practical, tangible, easy, something you love to do.
Yeah.
That's where we start.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that this is so true. It doesn't even have to be a loss of, a death. It could
No.
be you can use this when somebody's sick, when someone's
Yeah.
they lost their job, there's been some crisis or something, and you want to do something to make it this practical, this, delivering it this way really speaks to me. Thank you. That's
Yeah. Because
awesome.
all those losses bring grief, right? They're not all the same. They don't all last as long. The ruptures aren't all as big,
Yeah.
but we could sure use a helping hand when those things happen.
Yeah. Let me ask one other question before we split. And, I'm going to you'll see in the write up how to reach Suzanne if you want to have a one-on-one with her.
Mhm.
Um, tell us something about what you say as the griever that could, I don't know, that is the most helpful without, that would just be the most caring, self-caring. Is there something that you align
That would
that you
help me
go
as a
to
griever to know.
as a griever?
Yeah. When I'm speaking to grievers, what I want them to know and understand is that everything that's happening to them is absolutely normal.
Hmm.
It doesn't feel like that because we don't share our grief experiences. We don't share our stories. I do. Some of us do. But as a collective, we don't. We're not having those conversations.
Right.
So the sleeplessness, the brain fog, the digestive issues, all of the things that are happening to you are normal. They aren't forever. And you can get through it one breath, one choice, one small step at a time.
Mm. Yeah. And go listen to the story, Her Unstoppable Story,
Yeah.
because it really does speak a lot about, how you got through it.
Yeah. And you just really need to give yourself radical permission
Mm,
because we don't get it from our culture. We don't get it from our friends and family. So that's our act of self care, right? We
yeah.
have to give ourselves that permission to grieve whatever way we need to,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because
And I
that's
would,
the right way. There's no one
yeah,
right way. How we need
right,
to in any given moment, that's the right way.
right. I talk a lot about, as a self-care mentor, about setting boundaries. And I think
Yep.
this is very much about having to have the courage to speak your boundaries, get clear what your boundaries are, and then
Mm-hmm.
speak them or send them out via email or text or something, but
Yep.
to let people know because, people can have the right intentions and not communicate it carefully in the right way, and it can be, I think it can create more harm than good. And so,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, the boundaries are critical. I remember my having a conversation with my daughter and saying, you know, we have to be very careful who we let onto our island.
Uh-huh.
Like, this is our island.
Yeah.
We're here together.
Right.
We have to be very careful about
Yeah.
who gets to come.
Right. Yeah, because if somebody is coming in and they're for their comfort, they're wanting to just cheer you up, and
Yeah.
that's not where you're at. It's like, no, no.
No,
Yeah.
cheerleaders were not welcome for a very, very, very
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
time.
I can understand.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. This was really enlightening for me, and I'm sure everyone that's listening, because it's part of life. We're going to go through it.
Yeah.
Grief is something that the better you can learn to move through it in the most honest way.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the ticket.
yeah, yeah. Be honest with others. Be honest with yourself. Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Thank you.